When he first spoke the words, people laughed, not because it was funny, but because it sounded impossible, even to him. I will become Edison's business partner. He had no money, no contacts, no education, just a suitcase, a one-way train ticket, and a desire so intense it felt like fire beneath his skin. Most men in his position would have looked for a job, but this man wanted a position. And today, you're going to discover how he transformed what Napoleon Hill called definite chief aim into one of the greatest success stories in the American industrial era. His name was Edwin C. Barnes. Remember that name, because by the end of this story, you'll understand why it belongs alongside the greatest success stories in American history. This is a story about the power of a decided mind. This is a story about how a single thought, when charged with emotion and purpose, can move mountains. Because what you're about to learn isn't just history, it's a blueprint, a mental technology that turned a nobody into a millionaire. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to apply it in your own life.
Before we dive into Barnes' story, you need to understand the principle that made it all possible. Napoleon Hill discovered that every successful person he studied had one thing in common. They had what he called a definite chief aim. Not goals, not dreams, not wishes. A definite chief aim. Napoleon Hill called this definite chief aim in his first work, The Law of Success, 1928. Later, in Think and Grow Rich, 1937, he would refine this concept as desire, but the essence remained the same: a specific objective charged with intense emotion and backed by unwavering faith. Most people say, "I want to be successful." A person with definite chief aim says, "I will build a technology company worth $1 billion by December 31st, 2030. Most people say, "I want to be rich." A person with definite chief aim says, "I will earn exactly $500,000 per year through real estate investments within the next 5 years. Most people say, "I want a better life." A person with definite chief aim says, "I will become Thomas Edison's business partner." You see the difference? A definite chief aim has 5 characteristics. First, it's specific, crystal clear, no ambiguity. Second, it has a deadline, a specific time frame. Third, it's written down, not just thought about. Fourth, it's backed by a plan of action. Fifth, it's charged with burning desire. And that last point, burning desire, that's where Barnes was different from everyone else. Because when he said, "I will become Edison's partner," he didn't hope it would happen. He didn't wish it would happen. He decided it would happen. And Hill teaches us that there's a vast difference between wishing for something and deciding on something. When you wish, you leave room for doubt. When you decide, you eliminate all other possibilities. Barnes had made a decision, and the universe, it had to rearrange itself to accommodate that decision.
Edwin C. Barnes stepped off the freight train wearing a second-hand suit and shoes that didn't quite fit. The town was Orange, New Jersey. The year, 1905. This was the age of invention, the age of Edison. Electric lights were still a marvel. The phonograph was changing how people experienced music. And Thomas Edison was the wizard behind it all. But here's what you need to understand about that time. Edison wasn't just an inventor. He was an empire. His laboratory employed hundreds of the brightest minds in America. His companies were worth millions. His name was in every newspaper. And Barnes? Barnes was nobody. He had been born poor, raised poor, had no formal education beyond elementary school, had worked odd jobs his entire life, had failed at most things he tried. By every measure society uses to predict success, Barnes was destined to remain invisible. But something had happened to Barnes while reading about Edison in a magazine, something that changed everything. He described it later as a lightning bolt of certainty. Not an idea, not a thought, a knowing. I will work with this man. I will become his partner. And here's where Hill's principle becomes crucial. Barnes didn't say, I hope to work with Edison. He didn't say, maybe I can get a job at Edison's company. He said, I will become his partner. That word, will, is everything. Because when you say, I will, you're not making a prediction, you're making a declaration. You're announcing to the universe what's going to happen. And the moment Barnes made that declaration, everything changed. Not externally. Externally, he was still poor, still unknown, still had nothing. But internally, he had become a different person. He stopped being Edwin Barnes, the failure, and became Edwin Barnes, Edison's future partner. The name on his lips wasn't his own. It was Thomas Edison. And no one knew him. Not the station master, not the guards, not even Edison. But that didn't matter, because Barnes hadn't come to ask for work. He came to claim something. Most men in his shoes would have looked for an opportunity. Barnes wasn't most men. He wasn't looking for a chance. He was looking for his seat at the table. The decision had been made long before he ever boarded the train. And this is where Hill's principle becomes practical. The decision always comes before the action. You don't take action and hope it leads to success. You decide on success and then take the actions that match that decision. Barnes had already decided. The train ticket was just logistics.
Edison's laboratory wasn't a place you just walked into. It was a fortress of invention, a symphony of minds, security guards, appointments, protocols. But Barnes didn't hesitate. He walked in like he belonged there. I'm here to become Mr. Edison's partner. They laughed, but they let him in. And there he stood, face to face with the man who shaped the future. Now, here's what's fascinating about this moment. Hill interviewed both Barnes and Edison years later, and Edison remembered this conversation vividly. He said Barnes had something in his eyes, something he'd never seen before. Not desperation, not hope, certainty. What exactly do you want, young man? I've come to go into business with you. No joke, no nerves, only certainty. Edison was intrigued. Here was a man with nothing who spoke like he had everything. Here was a stranger who acted like he belonged. But Edison was also practical. He couldn't just hand over a partnership to someone he'd never met. So he gave Barnes a job, a small, ordinary task, a place in the mailroom, a broom in his hand, minimum wage. To others, it was a step down. To Barnes, it was already a step in. And this is where Hill's principle becomes even more powerful. When you have a definite chief aim, every step forward, no matter how small, is progress toward your ultimate goal. Barnes didn't see the mailroom as beneath him. He saw it as his first office in Edison's company. He didn't see the broom as a symbol of failure. He saw it as his first tool for serving his future partner. He wasn't working for Edison. He was working with him. The world just didn't know it yet. And here's what Hill discovered. When you truly commit to a definite chief aim, your entire perception changes. You stop seeing obstacles and start seeing stepping stones. You stop seeing rejections and start seeing redirections. You stop seeing delays and start seeing preparation. Barnes had committed, completely, irrevocably. And from that moment on, Everything he did was in service of his definite chief aim.
Days blurred into weeks, then months, then longer. Still, no promotion, no recognition, no opportunity. The other employees whispered about him. Why doesn't he quit? What's he waiting for? He could get a better job anywhere else. But Barnes never flinched, never complained, never slowed down. Because he saw the dust and the deliveries through different eyes. He wasn't mopping the floor, he was preparing the foundation. He didn't hope to be seen, he knew he would be. Because the fire hadn't faded, it had become the fuel. And this is where Hill's research becomes profound. He discovered that the time between decision and manifestation is a test, not of your skills, not of your luck, of your faith in your own decision. Most people make a decision and then spend the following weeks looking for evidence that it was the right decision. And when they don't see immediate results, they change their minds. Barnes was different. He had made his decision and then spent every day acting as if the outcome was inevitable. Desire backed by faith, Hill would write, knows no such word as impossible. And Barnes was already living as proof. Every morning he walked into that laboratory not as an employee, but as a future partner who happened to be learning the business from the ground up. Every task, no matter how menial, was approached with the dedication of someone who knew he would one day be responsible for the entire operation. Every interaction with Edison was conducted with the respect of an equal who simply hadn't been formally recognized yet. Hill calls this acting as if. Acting as if your definite chief aim has already been achieved. Acting as if you are already the person you've decided to become. Because here's what Hill discovered. Your external world is always a reflection of your internal world. When you truly believe you are something on the inside, the outside world has no choice but to eventually reflect that belief. Barnes believed he was Edison's partner. Not hoped, not wished, believed. And belief, Hill teaches us, is the foundation of all achievement.
Then the door appeared. Not a grand stage, not an announcement, just a machine. The Ediphone, a dictation device that Edison had invented but couldn't figure out how to market. The salesman had tried, the marketing team had strategized, but nobody could make it work. It was sitting in the corner of the laboratory, gathering dust, a brilliant invention with no market. A solution, looking for a problem. Most people saw it as Edison's failure. Barnes saw it as his opportunity. But here's what's crucial to understand. The Ediphone had been sitting there for months. Every employee in the laboratory walked past it every day. Every salesman had tried and failed with it. So why did Barnes see what no one else could see? Because when you have a definite chief aim, your mind becomes attuned to opportunities that align with that aim. Hill calls this applied faith. Faith is not just believing something will happen. Faith is recognizing the opportunity when it appears. And Barnes had been preparing for this moment without even knowing it. All those months in the mailroom, all those conversations with Edison, all those hours observing the business. He had been unconsciously studying the market, learning the customers, understanding the problems. And when he looked at the Ediphone, he didn't see a failed product. He saw the missing piece of his puzzle. "Let me sell it," he said. Edison paused. Barnes had never asked for anything before, never complained about his position, never pushed for advancement. But now he was stepping forward, claiming his moment. "You think you can sell something my best salesman couldn't sell? I don't think I can sell it. I know I can." That word again, know. Not hope, not think, know. Edison agreed, but not because he believed in the product,
because he believed in Barnes. And this is where Hill's principle becomes revolutionary. When you commit to a definite chief aim with burning desire, you develop what Hill calls applied faith, the ability to recognize and seize opportunities that others miss. Barnes didn't just sell the Ediphone, he evangelized it. He created demand where none existed. He brought belief to a marketplace that had given up. He traveled from city to city, demonstrated the machine to business owners, showed them how it could save time, save money, increase efficiency. But more than that, he sold them on the vision, the future, where every business would use dictation, where executives could speak their thoughts and have them transcribed, where efficiency would reach new heights. Within months, the Ediphone went from forgotten failure to Edison's most profitable product. Within a year, Barnes became the exclusive distributor for the entire United States. Within 5 years, he had built a distribution network that made him a millionaire. He became the partner, exactly as he said, exactly as he saw, because he had already arrived years before, in his mind, in his spirit, in his decision. And here's what Hill teaches us about this moment. The opportunity was always there. Barnes simply became the man who could see it.
Years later, people would call it luck, or timing, or being in the right place at the right moment. But Barnes knew better. Edison knew better, and Hill knew better. It wasn't talent. Barnes had no special sales training. It wasn't strategy. He had no business education. It wasn't connections. He had started with none. It was desire, fused with identity, charged with emotion, backed by unwavering faith. He didn't wish to become Edison's partner. He didn't hope to become Edison's partner. He became Edison's partner in his mind first, and then the world had to catch up. When one is truly ready for a thing, Hill wrote, it puts in its appearance. But here's what Hill means by ready. Ready doesn't mean qualified. Ready means decided. Barnes wasn't qualified to be Edison's partner when he first walked into that laboratory, but he was ready because he had decided. And that decision created what Hill calls a state of readiness, a mental condition where you become magnetized to the opportunities, people, and circumstances that align with your definite chief aim. The Ediphone wasn't luck. It was the inevitable result of a mind that had been prepared to recognize its moment. Barnes didn't wait for the miracle. He became the man who could see it, while everyone else walked right past the door. And this is the power of definite chief aim. It doesn't just help you achieve your goals. It transforms you into the person who is worthy of those goals. Barnes didn't just become Edison's partner. He became the man who deserved to be Edison's partner. And that transformation is available to anyone willing to make the same decision Barnes made.
So how do you apply Barnes' story to your own life? How do you harness the power of definite chief aim? Hill gives us a specific formula. Step 1, be specific. Don't say, I want to be successful. Say, I will build a $10 million business by December 31st, 2030. Barnes didn't say, I want to work with successful people. He said, I will become Edison's business partner. Specificity is power, because a general desire creates general results, but a specific aim creates specific opportunities. Step 2, set a deadline. Dreams without deadlines are just wishes. Barnes didn't say, someday I'll work with Edison. He bought a one-way ticket and gave himself no option to retreat. Your definite chief aim must have a specific timeline, because urgency creates intensity, and intensity creates results.
Step 3. Write it down. Hill discovered that successful people don't just think about their aims, they write them down. They read them daily. They revise them regularly. Your definite chief aim should be written on paper in your own handwriting and read out loud every morning and every evening. Step 4. Charge it with emotion. Barnes didn't just want to work with Edison, he burned to work with Edison. Desire without emotion is a daydream, but when you charge your vision with belief, repetition, and feeling, you become magnetized to the very future you imagined. Step 6. Act as if. From the moment Barnes made his decision, he acted as Edison's business partner. Not Edison's employee, not Edison's admirer, Edison's partner. You must begin acting as the person you've decided to become. Dress like that person, think like that person, make decisions like that person. Because your external world is always catching up to your internal world. Step 7. Persist through the test. The time between decision and manifestation is always a test. Barnes was tested for years, but he never wavered, never doubted, never quit. Your definite chief aim will be tested. You will face setbacks. You will encounter doubters. You will question yourself. But remember Barnes. Remember that the test is not punishment. The test is preparation. You're being prepared to handle the success you've decided to create.
If this story lit a spark in you, don't let it fade. Your definite chief aim is waiting for you to claim it. Your partnership with destiny is waiting for you to declare it. Your transformation is waiting for you to decide on it. Like this video to show the algorithm you want more stories like this. Subscribe to our channel because we bring you not just inspiration, but mental tools to rewire the path to your success. Until the next video, remember Barnes, remember the power of decision, and remember that your future is not determined by where you come from, but by where you decide to go. Keep the fire alive.